This week, we speak with Judy and Ngure from Africa's Talking about AppSec testing and bug bounties. In the news segment, DLL hijacking returns with OneDrive. A Zoom flaw returns with OneWindows. Application threat modeling returns to OAuth tokens. Firefox returns it sends service safely, and more. Stay tuned as Application Security Weekly returns.
This is a Security Weekly production. It's the show to learn the latest tools, techniques, and processes necessary to understand DevOps, application security, and cloud security. Your trusted source for the latest application security news. It's time for Application Security Weekly. Today, cybercriminals are taking advantage of an expanded attack surface to commit malicious activities ranging from hijacking user accounts to making fraudulent purchases. Businesses need solutions that can protect their sites from this increase in fraudulent activity. reCAPTCHA Enterprise is a frictionless fraud detection service that leverages our experience from more than a decade of defending the internet with reCAPTCHA and data for our network of 4 million sites. To learn more about how reCAPTCHA can defend your website or mobile application against fraudulent activity, visit securityweekly.com/reCAPTCHA. Security threats in cloud-native environments move fast, which means that security teams need to have the same visibility into their infrastructure, network, and applications as developers and operations. With Datadog security monitoring, engineering teams can easily detect malicious activity in real time before it affects their customers. Use out-of-the-box detection rules and detailed observability data in one unified platform to investigate security attacks. See it in action by signing up for a live security demo and receive a Datadog t-shirt by visiting securityweekly.com/Datadog. With 84% of cyber attacks targeting the application layer, securing your software is more challenging than ever. Synopsys enables DevSecOps with a portfolio of industry-leading tools including Coverity, Black Duck, and Seeker to help you build secure, high-quality software faster. Synopsys is the leader in application security testing. Visit securityweekly.com/Synopsys to learn more.
Welcome to Application Security Weekly. This is episode 114, recorded July 13th, 2020. I'm your host, Mike Shima. I'm here with Matt Alderman. Hello, Matt.
Hey, Mike. 2 days left to tax day. Everybody get their taxes ready.
Good reminder. Let's see John Kinsella, and you're hiding out. We have you here. How's your tax situation going?
I'm still hiding away. The IRS owes me money this year, so I'm not hiding from them at least.
That sounds good. Good to have you both here. Register for our upcoming webcasts or virtual trainings by visiting securityweekly.com/webcasts or visit securityweekly.com/on-demand to view our previously recorded webcasts. With all the recent changes to Black Hat and DEF CON, we realize we can keep doing what we do best, host virtual podcasts. I'm proud to announce Hacker Summer Camp 2020, a Security Weekly virtual live stream event from August 3rd through 6th, 2020. To reserve your slot now, visit securityweekly.com/summercamp2020. Judy Ngure is a cybersecurity engineer at Africa's Talking. She is the founder of Women of Security Kenya and a cybersecurity researcher at HackerOne. Hello, Judy, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, Johnny. Nice to meet you too. Nice to meet you again.
Good to see you. Now, an important part of DevSecOps is testing application security to make sure that design and build process hasn't actually created some bugs, some flaws. And Judy, you've worked on all kinds of AppSec testing, including bug bounties. What pulled you into the testing space and bug bounties in particular?
Well, the good thing the thing that actually got me into application security is the fact that applications are very dynamic and we have a lot of new technologies coming up. So with new technologies, it was new bugs and new ways to attack application. So the fact that it was so dynamic is what actually drove me into the application security space.
Yeah, I definitely hear that. There's definitely a lot of creativity that for as much as developers create new and different applications, they also unfortunately seem to create new and different types of bugs. But a lot of those bugs, I'm going to guess, aren't necessarily just in the OWASP top 10. So let's talk a little bit about bug bounties and sort of both your approach to finding bugs and what are the sort of bugs that you actually find out there in real applications?
Awesome. So my technique, how much time you got? All right. So yes, the bugs that you find on most applications in the new, the new era, don't always encompass the OWASP top 10. They've become a bit more sophisticated. As much as we have the top vulnerabilities that most applications have, we have those that they don't actually follow systematic processes. They vary in the how the application actually interacts with the user, and those are what we call logical bugs. You don't actually find them following. If you're testing for an XSS, you test input, and if it's a reflected XSS, you test input and see if it will reflect back the script. So that is systematic. That's how you follow a reflected XSS. But then we have those logical bugs that actually sound how the user interacts with the application, or how the application interacts with the user, or how the application interacts with the server. Yeah, so those are what you call logical bugs, and they are the worst to actually have, because they tend to expose more information than some of the OWASP top 10 bugs.
So Judy, with systematic bugs, I mean, we can use things like dynamic application security testing tools to throw payloads at them to look to see, is there cross-site scripting? Is there SQL injection? Are those types of systematic bugs? But with logical bugs, it's a different approach. And so is it more manual because you have to understand the interaction of how the application is interacting with the user, and therefore requires more human intervention?
Yes, it's very, very manual. So yes, as you're saying, you're right. When you're testing for OWASP top 10, you have tools. Like if it's an SQL injection, you have maybe an SQL map that you'll actually use as proof of concept to, extract databases from the application that is vulnerable. But for logical bugs, you actually need to understand the application and how it actually works. You need to, it's a very manual process. You have to click here, send that request, resend it back, change some things on the request, send the response, see if the response has this, try something funny, but you actually need to understand how the application is interacting. It's a very manual process, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, especially for me, I have some background writing automation to do that security testing, and everything you're describing about actually having to understand what that application is doing, that's definitely where humans still excel and where you need people behind that mouse and keyboard to actually do that testing. So with that in mind, when let's say I'm launching a new bug bounty program, when you see a new program show up, how does that influence what you look for, or what's a little bit of your strategy when you see a new program launch?
Wow, for a bug bounty hunter, a new program is like adrenaline mixed with energy drinks, because that's the platform that is untouched by anyone. And with the new development, as you had said, Johnny, developers don't only develop apps, but they develop new bugs. So for us, a new program is like, whoa. It doesn't matter if it's in the middle of the night or if it's a weekend. If it's a new program, people will actually, just get in there and see and get the low-hanging fruits as fast as possible. So for me, if it's a new program, first of all, I think this is an approach that is very common with bug bounty hunters who've been doing this for a while. You don't actually go for the main for the main domain. If it's a web application, you don't go for the main application. If the subdomains are part of the scope, for me, the process is easy. I go through the scope of the bug bounty. If it's one domain, sometimes I don't bother, but if it has domains, some subdomains in it, that's a yes for me. Second thing I check for is, I have to check what are the vulnerabilities in scope. So I'm very good in some bugs, and there are those that I'm not really good at. So I don't. If I'm trying to learn, yes, it's okay. I go for those ones that have in scope some of the things that I am not really good at. But if I'm trying to make money, which is I'm always trying to make money, I check for the scope, and if there are vulnerabilities that I like that are part of scope, I take it. If they are out of scope, sometimes you have to think twice about it. E.g., you'll see in bug bounty there is a mixture of some some programs that don't allow cross-site origin, CORS, and I like that bug for some reason. So for me, I'm like, okay, you see, as much as that is not part of the scope, most newbies don't actually check what is out of scope, and you end up reporting a bug that was not in scope. So when the team actually tells you, this is not applicable, and it actually ruins your signal, you kind of get agitated. Maybe you spend a couple of days on it. So that's another thing I check for.
Yeah, that's a good point about all the. I was going to say real quick, John, about the domains, that there's also subdomains and API testing that's got to be a little bit different too. But maybe I'll set that. I want to get that in, but John, you haven't had a chance to chat. Yeah,
I think we're actually going down the same path, because what I was going to ask there, Judd, is think about you've been doing this from a testing point of view for a while, looking at these scopes. If you were going to actually write that, if you were going to hop over the fence and do this from a company's point of view and actually write out that scope, what would you do that you see missing?
Okay. I don't know if I get your question.
So think about what I'm saying is you've looked at a lot of these from a point of view of what do I want to attack or where do I want to attack? So yes. I'm guessing that you're sometimes seeing that they're missing either describing a part of it, or that they've either made the scope too narrow or too wide, right? Or there's something that you've probably seen, I'm guessing, that they could do better. Anything like that you'd think they should improve, or that you would improve if you were writing on the other side?
All right. Yes, definitely. Yeah. Sometimes you look at a bug and a program and you're like, oh, this shouldn't be there, or this should be there. So I think, first of all, a company should, look at the most essential assets. If you're a company that, your main app, e.g. Facebook, your main, product is the mobile app, or, the web interface, I'm guessing the mobile app, I'm not really on Facebook, is the mobile application. So first of all, that is your main asset. So you ask yourself a question: if anything were to happen to this product, if anything was to happen to this web application, what are the repercussions of it to the business? So the most critical assets should be on bug bounty. I always say that. Always put the most critical assets on bug bounty, because with bug bounty, you tend to remove, you reduce your risks of actually waking up one morning and, everyone is calling you and saying, the app is not working, and, your mobile lending app and your app is not working. So ideally, you're not in business. So the most critical apps, then the most critical, I think if I say endpoints and apps is still the same things. So what companies do is they scope out the app, scope the app and then scope out some endpoints in there, because they feel like some endpoints should not be tested because they have a lot of critical, requests going from the client to the server. So I feel like have some faith in the bug bounty program, to the fact that it doesn't matter how critical it is, bugs will be found, and when bugs are found, you're at a lower risk. So that is another thing I'd say. Also, I'd say categorize your bug bounty. That's the things that are on scope. So if you want all your assets on bug bounty, most companies put the most critical, with critical bug, they have vulnerability disclosure that are very high. So if, e.g., if it's a program that, has -evo.com, then you have this program, the highest bounty will be paid is $2,000. But then you have those assets that, are in the backseat. If they were to affect the business, they will not affect the business as much. So those ones, you also put them down there and, make sure you say that this vulnerability, this asset is also in scope, but the highest bounty for this is $500. Yeah.
Isn't that funny? We've seen that same thing in penetration testing too, right? Where people are like, oh, don't test that. You might break it. Well, what? Do you think the hackers aren't going to test it? It's anyways, Mike.
Hackers, there's never a hacker who said that was out of scope. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, right?
Nowhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, but I think your point's valid, Judy, is that if you don't understand what's in scope and out of scope, it affects which bounties you're going to take on and which ones you aren't. And if a company is excluding certain types of vulnerabilities, or they're excluding certain types of applications, or what should be classified as critical, they're also not getting the full value out of the bug bounty program either.
Yes, that's true. That's very true, yeah. So if you are, and that has happened a lot where companies put a certain asset, and then when you're testing it, you see some things, pan out, maybe a subdomain that was connected to the main domain, and then you realize the subdomain also has some vulnerabilities. So keep in mind that if it's on a platform, a bug bounty platform, the bug bounty platform is limited to that one scope. So they can't actually do much about it. But if you want to disclose it, or you can only disclose it to the company, the problem is you don't know how they're going to react to you actually disclosing vulnerabilities that was in an asset that they actually didn't want you to test. Sometimes it goes really bad. Sometimes it goes, sometimes it goes really well.
Yeah, it's definitely always better to have a conversation with the security team rather than the legal team when you're trying to report those types of vulns. But like Judy and John, like the part of conversation you were bringing up too is really good about like what's in scope and what's critical assets. And there's also an aspect to bug bounties and to the idea of risk is that a critical vuln that's a high value vuln, especially from your perspective, Judy, like being the bounty tester, I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that you're not finding SQL injection everywhere. At least I'm hoping that has been mostly fixed. It's a bit rare, but I'm also going to guess that you can make some good money off of what end up to be relatively simple vulns. So what's something really interesting you found, or even what's been a good bounty in the financial sense that you've come across?
Oh, I hope this is high for the rest. Okay, I've not actually been in bounty for that long, but yes, Johnny, I've actually never found a SQL injection. I don't know why, but I've actually never found a SQL injection. But I've had a vulnerability of $5,000. I think that was the highest that I got paid for a logical bug. So it was 2-in-1, where there was information disclosure of if I just disclose the information disclosed on the request, I would have made some money. But what most hackers do is they try to escalate the same bug. So if the information disclosure actually, helped me get another bug, because I could actually, do more access because I had the information as part of the program. So that was actually, those are two bugs in one that actually made me $5,000. And there were two tiny. If I reported each, probably one would have been medium, the other would have been low. But actually, both would have been medium, but when I reported them together, it was very critical.
That's awesome. And I think that goes back to one of, I know Matt's favorite topics, how misconfigurations can be pretty consequential.
Right. And when you can chain them together to the point, right? She found an information disclosure, didn't report that separately, use that to find another vulnerability to escalate the bug to a higher point where she got paid more for it, right? And so a misconfiguration, those types of things can also find other bugs in the program.
Yes, that's what we call. Even when you're learning bug bounty, they tell you, okay, you start small and you find the low hanging fruits, and you're excited. Oh my God, I found an API key, and then they're like, can you try and escalate it? See what actually the API key can give you. Reporting the API key, if it's a private key, of course makes you some cash, but actually escalating it gives you even more, hold on the program, and you're like, I found an API key, and then and then this happened, and then this led to an XML injection, or something.
Yeah, it's funny that the analogy I usually give folks around that is I like to rock climb, and if you're climbing a wall or outside on rocks, and you see some little tiny thing, you're like, can I get a finger or two in there and hold on to it? And like, that's not going to help you. You're not going to climb the wall from that one piece, but each little tiny thing you see, it might not seem like much by itself, but each one sort of climb the whole thing, and next thing you know, you're getting a nice check.
That is very true. Yeah.
Yeah, it also, for me, having worked on a DAST scanner myself, DAST and SAST is always going to be near and dear to my heart, but you're really pointing out that human ingenuity and creativity to be able to chain vulnerabilities together and, climb those rocks in creative ways, finding that path is always going to be in the realm of humans. So I think that's still a good thing. I was also going to ask Judy about going back to the idea of like those subdomains and APIs. If you were, and maybe we can look at this question from two different ways, either as you're looking at an application fresh, or if you were to sit down with the DevOps team and say, you know what, I always find these particular problems, here's some advice. What advice would you either give that team, or what would you start poking around when you're looking at APIs in particular? Does that make a difference when we're looking at web applications?
Yes. So I found that most people don't actually understand API security, and it's good and bad. It's good for a bug bounty hunter, because most people don't understand what they are putting out there. It's different from a web application. So web application has a user interface. You can click some search buttons and requests. You can actually see how the flow of the information is going, or the request is going. So for you to actually tell a developer, there's an XSS on this search bar, it's very easy. Just tell them, there's an input. You can find that post request. Just don't allow characters. It's very simple to do, because search bar inputs, very systematic. But with APIs, APIs don't have user interfaces. And if you're doing bug bounty, some companies don't give you an endpoint. It's right here. You actually have to trigger an endpoint when you're doing, your bug bounty. So if I have a web application, here is I'm doing a login. Then there's a first name, last name. It's easy. That's first name. Maybe it has executable JavaScript here. So you just show them the JavaScript. Just avoid inputs from this end. And then when you click the login, that's when you trigger an endpoint. So the endpoint is not found unless you trigger the login, and it has to be successful. If it's not successful, what's happening? So for security in terms of web application, developers actually, they're understanding, but when you're doing DevSecOps, it's actually good to integrate when you do a release 1 or a release 2. It's very easy to do security, and you actually do sit down with them. And if it's a developer who is actually curious to know what's happening, the next time they'll not have that vulnerability, they'll not have that problem. But for the APIs, the vulnerabilities are a bit different, because you can't have some of this problem, but you will have other problems that are also in the application. But it's very hard to explain, how to mitigate API, how to establish API security. So if I'm telling you, e.g., don't allow all HTTP methods if it's a if it's a post or a get, just don't allow all HTTP method, because if I'm trying to show you that entity, actually most developers want you to prove that it's actually possible, that vulnerability. So you have a request that is getting from something, but then the developer has enabled post. Now you see you can actually post and create new entries into the server, but it was just supposed to get existing data and send it back, but now this one is creating new entries. So it becomes a bit tricky for you to teach, but I think the developers actually very interested to actually know how they can exploit their own applications.
It touches on two interesting points there. One of which is just communicating the risk of what you find. So both just in the bug bounty programs, as well as you're just describing now, talking with developers. What have been some successful ways, or what would be some suggestions you have for better communicating either the technical aspects of flaws that you discover, or putting the risk of a particular flaw into perspective for that program or for that developer?
Okay, so developers create their own apps, so they actually understand how the application is working. Well, most of them understand how the application is working. So it would be essential if you actually, it might sound ridiculous, but it's good to handhold them and show them the vulnerability. Teach them how to actually exploit their own application. The best security people would be developers, because they create the apps and they know what is where. They know everything. They know what they put there. So they'd be the best security testers. So advice method one is handhold them, show them, do the exploits with them. If it's like the one I was saying, for allowing methods on HTTP methods that should not be allowed on APIs, create that request, use Postman or whatever tool they are using, and then send the request, send the normal request, and then try and manipulate with another request that should not be allowed. They will actually tend to understand, because they will see the disclosure, they will see the problem that you're actually trying to explain to them. I would not advise the scanners report vulnerability, and then you send it to them. Most of them don't bother, because that when you do a VA without actually exploits, most of them are false positives, and some of them might be valid, but they actually don't show you how the exploit looks like. So when you send them a report of 300 pages, they're not in the business of securing apps, they're in the business of creating the application. They are more worried about the app working than the security end of it.
See, we have the same problem in device vulnerability management too.
Yeah. Judy, we've been complaining. We've been complaining about that for the last few months, of like, these 300-page reports are absolutely useless. I mean, even frequently to the security people, not alone to the developers. Right. I want to go down two paths. And first, I'd love to ask, Judy, from your point of view, any reading recommendations, either for people who want to get into bug bounties or want to learn more about how to do this type of thing. Where would you point people like that for something like that?
All right. So if you want to get into bug bounty, step one, do not be so focused on making money that you actually lose the concept of what bug bounty is all about. So bug bounty, yes, it's hackers getting paid, but they're getting paid because they're doing something extraordinary. So if you get too focused on the money-making platforms, remember, you are in competition with 500,000 other hackers. So if you're trying to get into bug bounty, I'd advise go for the free. There are those bounties that don't pay. Those bounties, most people don't actually go to them, because people are trying. Bug bounty is someone's full-time job, so they want to make money as much as they can. But if you're trying to get into bug bounty, go for the free programs. They have a lot of vulnerabilities because no one actually bothers to get them. The vulnerabilities that you disclose help you with your signal. And with the signal, as the signal grows, you actually get invited to private programs. So the private programs are only, you get invited to private programs when you've reached a certain signal. So if you just join, there's that standard signal, and if you don't report bugs, you can't get invited to private programs. So the private programs as well have less people on them. So if you have 5, I think, e.g. for Hakan, they reported that they have over 500,000 hackers on their platform. If there's a private program, probably is 30 or 40 people who are on that private program. And out of 30 or 40 people, those people are invited to 30 more other programs. So they're probably focused on, those bounties are very, very high, or someone has, that thing going with a specific bounty. So as a hacker, you start off on a program and then you get one bug. The probability of you leaving it is very low. So most people tend to go with it, go with the flow, you get another bug. So you see, no one is focused on other programs. So I'd say get the, report the open, the non-paying one, get your signal high, get invited to private programs, and then from the private programs, you actually get to find more vulnerabilities as well. Then the advice too is those domains that actually have subdomain. Maybe that's just me. Those that have subdomain as part of their scope tend to have more, more vulnerabilities. So, e.g., a public program, like I think Uber is public, I hope. It has all its subdomain under it that is part of the scope. So Uber probably has 300 subdomains. So if you just pick that program, you have 300 plus subdomains to actually test your skills on. That would be advice 2. Advice 3 is go for the HackerOne CTFs. They're very good. They also help with your signal. So on HackerOne, signal and rep is everything. They actually you get invited to even, HackerOne live meetups because your signal is, or you're doing some really nice work. Yeah. And then advice 3 is don't scan these applications for, using scanners because some programs don't actually take reports directly from scanners. There are those, I think I did that once. I scanned with a scanner, I got a vulnerability, I copy pasted the report and sent it to the bug bounty platform. And then they said, no, we actually don't take, generated reports from scanners. So focus on learning the program, focus on learning the application. If you're very interested in a particular platform, you can subscribe to a notification that sends alerts on your email when a new program is just come up. Like today there's one that came out, that's why I'm seated here, because I was really testing it before actually guys get to it. Yeah.
Well, Judy, I definitely don't want to keep you from being able to go testing and finding out new and creative vulns. And you've definitely given us some good insight onto your techniques, some good ways of working with programs. Let me ask one last real quick question. We haven't touched on tools. And I think, too, you were also talking about like working with developers and getting them, hand-holding them through testing. So what's a little bit of your AppSec tool chest and how hard or difficult would those be to just share with developers?
All right. So for testing, there's the initial tools that you could use. Actually, I just have used one, and that are usually part of the DevSecOps operation. So when you release a new code, maybe on your Bitbucket or whichever central program you guys are using, you can integrate with a tool like SonarQube, and it will actually automatically, it's an automatic tool that actually helps you find vulnerabilities while you're developing. So it gives you feedback. It runs it, shows you there's this problem with your code here and there. So you can integrate that with your development lifecycle. And then there are those tools that you use for testing. There are very many, but I'll give a few that I think most people do use. Actually, most bug bounty hunters or application security testers. So if you're searching for if you have a program that has subdomains, they don't usually list the entire subdomain list over there. So what they do is they put asterisk before the main domain. So if it's asterisk.evo.com, so for you, your job is actually to get all the subdomains. So to get the subdomains, we have two tools I use. I use Sublista or NocPy. So those are very nice tools, easy to use. E.g. NocPy. NocPy is just one line of command. It's very easy to use. Sublista is very well known because it's very well used as well. So I use both. Sometimes you find one will list others that are not, one will list 10, the other one will list 20. So some find more subdomains than the other one. So it's good to combine the two. If there's others out, I'm very sure there are others out there. So for fuzzing, we have the DIRB that is very good as well, and it's also very easy to use. Then there's the Hunter's Goldmine, and I don't think there's any hunter out there who doesn't use this tool. That is Bapsuit. Bapsuit is, the god of web application testing and mobile as well. So if you're testing your APK, if you're testing your web application, you want to proxy, then Bapsuit is the way to go. And it's very good. And they have 3 versions of it. I think they have the community, which is free. Then they have enterprise and professional. So one is $399, the other one is $3,999. Yeah. So one you can actually integrate as part of your CI/CD pipeline within the organization. So it also helps with the automation of security vulnerabilities. I'm guessing that is the most expensive one. But you can actually work with the community version. It's very good. But if you're looking to scan applications, the community version will not give you that. The community version is there to help you proxy requests, see what is actually happening with the application. If it wants to, you see your endpoints, or this will actually, Bapsuit community will help with that. And it has some integrations, it has add-ons that you can work with. And it's very easy to use. You just integrate your browser to Bapsuit using, port 8080. It's very easy.
Yeah, that's a great point, because it's a good combination that the tools that you use for bug bounty testing are the same tools that developers can use for building their code. So I think that's a good way to highlight both ends of that spectrum. We've got to wrap up here, and we'll let you loose to go grab your Burp Suite and go start targeting that bounty program that started off this morning. Thanks again, Judy.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And I want to thank Matt, I want to thank John, and we want to thank all of you for listening. We're going to take a quick break and return with news of the week.